Hello and welcome to Miniatures Rundown. I'm Joshua, and today I am joined by local Age of Sigmar player and guru, Kevin.
Hi.
Kevin's joining me mostly for the Kharadron Overlords book review because Kevin loves Kharadron Overlords.
Give me some dwarfs.
Give me some dwarfs. But he's also joined me because Mitchell has been affected by the worst of the Chaos Gods, Nurgle.
Nurgle's rot touches us all.
Yep, and he is out today, just like I was last week. So what we have here is the Regiment of Renown boxes,
right,
for Age of Sigmar. For those of you who don't know what that means, you did play a little bit of Oldhammer, right?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Back in the day in Warhammer Fantasy Battle, Regiments of Renown were like special characters, but they were units.
Mm-hmm.
Like there were halberdiers that you could bring if you were Empire, or even like Bretonnia could hire Empire in, or there were ones for orcs and goblins too, and stuff like that. So there were ones for chaos. Pretty much every faction had some. They were called Dogs of War back then. And so they had all kinds of like special rules that they were basically character units, more or less.
And if you came to Warhammer through the Total War Warhammer series, you would also know what Regiments of Renown are.
Right.
They are basically the same thing. It's like,
yep.
Demigryph Knights, except the Royal Altdorf Demigryph Knights, who are
Gotrek,
even better.
Or Gotrek and Felix.
Gotrek and Felix is a good one,
yeah.
So they brought them back.
Yes.
For Age of Sigmar. And what they are is it's a box of models that aren't selling very well. And I don't know if that's true.
It's like looking at these boxes, it's either stuff that people kind of already have if they're playing out these specific factions, or in this case, like for the dwarves, it's something that probably isn't selling terribly well.
Yeah, I tried that. I tried to make them work. It didn't work.
Right.
They brought them back, and they are essentially they were an Oldhammer, which is you field them all as a battalion.
Right.
Essentially.
And they have to deploy they actually have to deploy close to each other too as a part of that. So that's even more like really like hammering home that this is a character unit.
And basically all of their abilities only really fire if they're next to each other.
Right.
So really you want to keep them together.
Mm-hmm.
And then the interesting thing is with the exception of I think one of them, I think maybe this one, Cities of Sigmar one, you cannot field them in their own faction.
Correct. Yes.
So you cannot field the Cruel Boys one in Cruel Boys.
You cannot, no.
If you're playing Cruel Boys, you can't use these guys.
Right. You can't use them as their Regiment of Renown. You can use them as, their constituent units, but just not as the Regiment of Renown.
And with some of the prices on some of these are decent deals for just getting a lot of these units.
I agree, yeah.
Again, that would be more fun if they weren't all kind of bad. But that's not necessarily
The Cruel
true.
Boys one, I think, is an exception to that.
The Cruel Boys one is an exception for that. If you're a Warcry player, that's a very good exception. Yeah. I'm actually eyeing this one because I don't have either the Sphinx or the Fulmoroid, and I could use another.
It's a good deal if you missed out on those monsters on their initial release.
Right.
Yeah.
Because they've gone up in price since then.
They have.
But what we're going to do today is Mitchell is going to be long distance joining us, by which I mean he gave us his opinions.
Okay.
Kind of like we did for the Battle Force boxes previously. We're going to blind rank these.
Gotcha.
From worst to best.
All right.
So starting off, I'm going to put you on the spot, guest Kevin. What is your least favorite of these boxes?
Oh, mine will be Elthwin's Thorns.
All right, let's isolate it here. So put those off to the side.
Okay.
This is a unanimous decision.
Good.
Because Elthwin's Thorn was Mitchell's least favorite, and it is also my least favorite.
Not just because I don't like elves.
Right, yeah.
But also
aesthetically, this is not my least favorite.
No, they're actually, these Sylvan Death are really pretty.
They are.
The reason why I ranked them the way I did is because the bonuses they get really don't help the Gossamids very much. Like the Gossamids are really fishing for sixes on what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
And like they're getting +1 to wound, which isn't terribly useful.
We were going to look up the rules here. Yeah. Apologies, I'm not on my phone.
But yeah, they get +1 to wound. I guess the really cool thing about this Regiment of Renown is you do get to teleport them when they do the retreat at the end of combat, rather than getting to just fall back.
Yeah.
So they do get to teleport, which is pretty neat. But overall, I don't think it does they're already pretty fast, and they have all the restrictions of teleporting that you would normally have. So I don't think that's a very I just don't think it does a whole lot for these particular models.
Completely agree with all of that. Mitchell also completely agrees. He says, most of the items on the hero are useless. Weak range attacks only good for crit fishing.
Right.
I will further say that outside of the War Scroll battalions, the Arch Revenant has absolutely no synergies with the Gossamer Ostriches.
I agree too. Yeah, he doesn't like bring anything to them specifically.
Like, this is not a hero power pair in Sylvaneth.
Right.
They literally put them in the same box because they all have bug wings.
Right.
That's it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you can keep up with them.
I will say the one thing this does bring, because remember, you can't use this in Sylvaneth.
Right.
The one thing this does bring to a faction that might otherwise not have it is ranged mortal wounds.
Yeah, like I could see that being useful, and like, you know, as heretical as for me to say, like Fire Slayers, because, you know, Fire Slayers famously don't have a whole lot of range attacks.
Or range attacks, period, let alone mortals.
And order in general isn't like hurting for range attacks though.
No.
So it kind of feels like, I guess, a Daughters of Cain might. Daughters of Cain could benefit from that a little bit, but I guess it would complement the snakes in a way.
They have the bow snakes.
But I feel like Order just isn't hurting for range attacks, so I don't feel like this does a whole lot for a lot of Order armies. Like I said, except for like maybe Fire Slayers. I could potentially see play with them in Fire Slayers. Maybe not serious play, but I could see them like being useful.
Yeah, they would not go completely amiss.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that is also heresy.
Yeah, I don't like it, so I won't do it.
So by unanimous decision, number 6 out of 6, Elthwin's Thorns. We'll leave it at home.
Yep.
All right, I'm going to go next. Sorry,
okay.
On the mic. My number 5. It's a tough decision, but I'm going with Hargax's Pit Beasts.
Okay.
Mitchell's number 5 is Veremord Shamblers.
Interesting.
What is your number 5?
The Rune Throng.
The Rune Throng.
Yes.
Interesting. Could you grab the Shamblers for
Yep.
me? All right. So completely out of no agreement on this one.
Right.
What you got against the dwarfs here?
I feel like, I mean, the Rune Lord is a really good model. And it has really good rules.
Just a really good war scroll.
Yeah,
right?
it's just a really good war scroll. Like 2 unbinds at, or 1 unbind at a +2.
Yeah,
and
which is already for some factions.
Yeah, that's so good. However, like what like Ironbreakers aren't very, or Longbeards aren't very good.
No, they're not. It's not Longbeards. It's Ironbreakers and Hammerers.
It is. Oh, okay.
Yes.
I thought it was Longbeards.
Well, I think you can kind of build them. However,
that's a multi-choice kit. I think.
But they also have different kits on the front and the back.
So it's 1 Rune Lord, 10 Iron Drakes, and 10 Longbeards.
Okay, so it is interesting. They built them. Okay, so they just on the back they put
all the options.
So yeah. Longbeards.
Like they just don't have good attack profiles.
No.
They have some neat rules of like they can grumble away at endless spell.
Their main thing is the rerolling wounds for
Yes.
other dwarves.
Right.
But it's only in melee.
Right.
So it doesn't affect the Iron Drakes.
Right. And the Iron Drakes definitely don't want to be in melee.
No.
Iron Drakes are really good.
They are.
But they don't want to be in melee. And they're actually, Iron Drakes are kind of pricey right now.
They are.
For what, compared to other similar units in Order, Iron Drakes really can't pull their weight for that points cost.
Again, Order's not hurting for shooting.
Yeah.
I will say that Iron Drakes are potentially high rend shooting.
Yes.
Because
you can add rend with the Rune Lord.
The Rune Lord has a War Scroll prayer, which goes off on a 2, by the way.
Yeah.
Which is amazing. To give them +1 rend.
Uh-huh.
He can also give that +1 rend to the Ironbeard or Longbeards.
Yeah, I mean,
don't do that, but
no,
you could.
The Longbeards are just wholly unimpressive. Like they're not super expensive, but the other thing that's cool is you get to pick an objective that they're within 6 inches of, and that they count as double for claiming that objective. Unfortunately, they're just not super. Like they're 1 wound models. They're
they count as double, and the other big thing is that they get a 5-up ward while contesting
that's true.
it.
So that's not nothing.
That is pretty chunky.
But Iron Drakes are 4-up with a +1 versus range attacks, and Longbeards are a 4-up. So if they're in cover, they can get a
+3 if you give them the shield.
That's true. If you give them the shield option, which I guess if you're going to kit them out for claiming objectives, which might be what you want to do with them, then
I don't see any reason to kit them out with their great weapons because they have 1 attack and all it does is add 1 rend.
Right.
And it's 3s and 3s, 1 rend, 1 damage.
Yeah.
As opposed to 3s and 4s, no rend.
Right. Yeah, I would be on board with like. Unfortunately, like their points cost is a little like. I feel like it's a little expensive for what that whole package is.
Yeah.
Let me just reference it real quick here. but their points cost is
340.
That's really expensive.
That is basically as expensive as taking all these guys separately.
Right. Yeah, and for not a whole lot of extra.
No.
There might be something you could do with them in the new Kharadron, if you play Thryng. But I'm not sure, like, I don't know.
I'd rather give that Thryng prayer to... I'd rather use the Rune Lord, but nothing else in there.
Yeah.
I mean, it does have a 5-up ward on an objective, and as we will talk about in our review for Kharadron Overlords, which is going to be up here by the time. We haven't done it yet, but it will be.
Yep.
Kharadron don't have a lot of defense against mortal wounds.
Right.
Or staying power.
Right.
So this is something they could do. But the other thing, and the other reason these are not very good for me, is that these are slow.
Yes, they are. Only 4-inch movement.
You can't run and shoot those Iron Drakes.
Nope. And if you run it, actually, and the Iron Drakes are worse if you just move them. So,
yes, because you get 1 attack if you don't move the Iron Drakes.
Right.
So the idea behind these folks is sit on an objective and make it yours.
Right.
I don't think they do that well enough.
Yeah, and I don't think there's a whole lot of order that is like, Fire Slayers definitely don't need that. Stormcast don't need that extra help. Like maybe Daughters of Cain. Like, because they are significantly more durable than anything Daughters of Cain, but Daughters of Cain are hurting for points.
Yeah, and Daughters of Cain, I think, play the way they do so well that splashing into durability is not something you care about.
It doesn't really synergize.
That's not your point.
Yeah.
Your durability is the giant snake that won't die.
Right. Yeah.
That's what holds the objective.
Yeah. Goes and takes the objective and then moves on. Yeah.
You know what's better than a 5-up ward? 3 wounds a turn.
Yeah,
Screw you.
Not dying.
Yeah.
No bitterness at all.
Little bitterness.
But yeah, so those are my reasons behind why I don't think that the Rune Throng is terribly great.
So the Rune Throng was not my number 4.
Okay.
So
not
it
far
was
off.
next up.
Yeah.
The Rune Throng is Mitchell's number 1.
Really?
Pricey but worth it. Both hammer and anvil, very dwarf of them. So this gets the Mitchell seal of approval.
Okay, weird.
Which I think tells you how much the Mitchell seal of approval is worth. Mitchell and Cody absolutely roasted me last time I wasn't on, so I got to get back at him.
Fair enough.
Cody's over there laughing at me.
I approve.
Mitchell has faced the Iron Drakes before, and in cities of Sigmar, properly kitted out, Iron Drakes are absolutely brutal damage.
Yeah, in Tempest Eye.
They're amazing.
Right.
Because you can get +1 to wound. You can have shenanigans for running and shooting.
Right.
Without all of the city's support,
right,
I don't rate them.
And who knows what's going to happen when Dawnbringer Crusades comes out and replaces cities.
This is very true.
Yeah.
But yeah, those War Scrolls could change.
Right.
Which could make things very interesting.
Absolutely, yeah.
Some people have said that this means for certain that these models are not disappearing. I don't put any stock in that.
No, I give it a 50-50. Like, it's either they're clearing out these models or they are for sure going to be, because they are more recent sculpts in the timeline of models.
I will say all these sculpts hold up well.
Yeah, they do. They look good.
Yep.
They're pretty, like the Rune Lord's pretty, like all those models in there look good. They look proper dwarfy. So.
They all look better than other things we will discuss later.
Yeah.
So this was my number 4.
Okay.
We're just going to talk about them in the order that they are for you.
Sure.
It makes it less confusing.
Okay, fair.
So what is your number 4?
So mine would be the Pit Beasts.
All right. So we are pretty close on this.
So the reason, like, the Pit Beasts seem to be very matchup dependent upon whether or not they're useful or not.
Yeah.
If you're not facing monsters, a big part of their strength goes away.
Yep. So the Pit Beast rules: once per phase, the Orgoid Myrmidon in this regiment can issue the all-out attack or all-out defense to the Crusher or Mind Stealer, so not both, without the command point being spent.
Which is really cool. Yeah, that has, like, and they're both okay models in combat. Actually, the Veremord can do some pretty neat stuff.
He's pretty strong in combat. The Mind Stealer is more about shenanigans.
Yeah.
So I don't think you really care about all-out defense or all-out attack on him.
Not particularly, but the second paragraph is the thing that makes this
At
really
the end of the charge phase, you can pick either the Crusher or the Sphinx. So none of these things pick the Myrmidon.
Right. He has to not be part of that scrum.
Right.
Yeah.
He's the only one who gets to, he just orders.
Right.
It's kind of a shame. You get to pick one of those and one enemy monster within 3 inches of it. If you do so, roll a dice. On a 3+, the strike last effect applies to both units you pick in the following combat phase. So both the attack, the picky and the picker,
right,
get strike last.
Right. So you throw, and they're relatively, like, as far as trading is concerned, like, they're relatively inexpensive. So, like, and they're not super durable, but there's something you can throw up there, give a monster strikes last, and then you coordinate that punch with something else.
Yeah. You're striking. You use that to save something you want to save from getting hit,
right,
or to really make sure something dies.
Like you would use it like to stop things like big models like Archeon, for instance, from striking, or
Oh God, yeah. This is very matchup dependent.
Yeah.
My problems with it. The Myrmidon is just there to issue orders, which feels bad. I don't know why he doesn't get any of these things.
Yeah, and he's not. I mean, he's not bad in combat, but he's not great.
No,
like,
the Sphere Inks you really don't want within 3 inches of the monster.
No,
like Strike Last won't save you.
Like that's something that's kind of a throwaway. Like you are sacrificing that piece to get that benefit.
Yes, and the Crusher is okay, but not great. This one, and then monsters in general are not in ascendance right now.
Right. It like there are some. I mean, there are some people that are still playing Monster Mash, but it's definitely less of a presence in the meta as a whole.
But there are things this will absolutely annoy.
Daughters of Cain will bring that back. Like
Marathi hates this.
Yeah.
The problem is that against certain armies, it's completely useless.
Yep. You don't even get to use the ability.
Night Haunt absolutely do not care.
Nope. Not even a little bit.
Kharadron don't care.
Nope.
And these models aren't strong enough on their own
to justify bringing all 3 of them.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree.
I rated that a little worse than the dwarves, but they are very close.
Okay.
This was also Mitchell's number 4.
Okay, great.
So fine, but boring. Each monster is fine, but not great.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
So sitting around number 4 for us.
Okay.
All right, what's up next for you?
Oh, for me, actually, it is the Zench.
Really? You're number 3. All right.
So the Zench one is interesting because you get all 3 of the endless spells, but they kind of don't operate the way that other endless spells do. You summon one, and then it morphs into the others throughout the game.
Yes.
Which is really interesting.
This is the most fascinating one to me.
Yeah.
This is the one I like the best on the principle of it existing.
It's cool.
Yes.
Yeah. Like I love the concept. The Zench endless spells are kind of okay.
The one that makes a chaos spawn is really annoying.
Yes. Yeah.
The problem is you don't get to pick that one. It cycles between the others, which are mortal wounds, and I don't even remember what the third one does.
Oh, I don't recall. I hate Zench. I play Nurgle as well, so I'm not into this all pink horror stuff.
Kevin is the Nurgle spice, the channel needed, because Mitchell's a Zench and Slaanesh player. I hate everything chaos, honestly.
Yeah, he's not into it.
Great Horned Rat. You
were talking about Vashtor in the last video. So.
Yeah. Weird techno demons.
Fair enough.
Sorry. So he also comes with 20 pink horrors who do not split,
which is really important because that is like the bread and butter of taking pink horrors.
It's the only reason you possibly take pink horrors,
right? Because they don't really do anything.
No, they are a tar pit. They do nothing else.
So I definitely feel like it's the whole formation is kind of lost with the pink horrors. Like it just like it doesn't do the thing that you would bring pink horrors for.
It's worth noting that only the Magister can cast these spells.
Right.
If he dies, and he will,
he's not very durable. Even though he does benefit from if they happen to be battle line in the army that you ally them into or whatever, like he can sharpshooters will still make short work of the Magister.
I believe you can't ever have them be battle line if they're allied in.
Okay.
I think.
I know still have the battle line roll.
Oh, right. But they can't count for your minimums.
Correct. Yes.
Okay. So you could have them do that.
Yeah. But that's only for this season, though.
Yeah.
In future seasons, that rule could go away.
And he's still going to die.
Yeah.
Magisters also have the tendency to turn themselves into Chaos Spawn.
Yeah.
Pretty easily. They're not very good.
Yeah, they're not a particularly preferred caster. So
yeah. I do also like the lore behind him, which is that he sold Tzeentch demon souls, and so Tzeentch is mad at him. And you really don't want to be a Tzeentch Magister and have Tzeentch mad at you.
No.
So he's kind of on the run with his endless spells, which are demon powered.
Yeah. And I once again, the thing of these spells transforming into each other it's a really cool concept. I really like that. Yeah. But that's why I ranked it where I did.
This was also my number 2.
Okay.
This was Mitchell's number 3.
All right.
Mortal wound spam to annoy opponent, weak to ranged, but otherwise good.
I can agree with that overall, yeah.
And he does play Tzeentch.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, basically, these pink horrors, because they don't split, they disappear when you look at them. So
yes, and yeah, this entire regiment is going to evaporate the first time someone throws a wet sock at it.
Right.
Which really kind of ruins it because you need to be close enough to use the spells.
Yep.
There is also a current loophole where technically if you put this in, the spells are added into your army
Yeah.
And maybe someone else could cast them again if you had another allied Tzeentch.
I expect that to be FAQ'd.
Expect that to be FAQ'd and don't play with it.
Right.
Don't play those games. It's not fun. So our number 3, this was my number 2.
Mm-hmm.
What is your number 2?
The Cruel Boys.
All right, the Cruel Boys.
Once again, it is a little matchup dependent, but there's a couple things that are cool about it that I think that don't depend on that matchup. Is they bring ranged to destruction where destruction may not have a whole lot of ranged available to them.
Except for Cruel Boys.
Right.
And I guess kind of goblins, but not really.
Yeah, I mean, their range is kind of weird. But regardless,
Goblins.
but you could bring it in Sons of Behemoth, for example.
Yeah.
Which don't have any ranged available to them except for like the Stones of the Giants throw or whatever. The benefit they get, of course, is if the kill bow it wounds a monster, the rest of the formation gets an extra shot against against that same monster, which their shooting profiles are excellent.
Yes.
And they still benefit from the envenomed weapons.
Yeah, they specifically gave them twin-laden skewers, which gives them the if you it's a 6 you get mortals to equal to the damage.
Right.
Which is great. And yeah, adding +1 to your attacks is the best kind of buff that you can possibly have for ranged attacks.
I mean, they're hit if they're standing still, they're hit on a 2+. If you want to fish, they can move and get an extra shot. They're shooting 3 shots apiece at that point. The leader would be shooting 4 shots apiece in each of those squads. So I mean, you can fish for mortals with that. I think it's a really good battalion overall.
And that is why this was actually my number 1.
Nice.
Because of the hole it fills for other models, or for other factions, because often destruction doesn't have ranged.
Right.
Ranged mortals are the best thing in Age of Sigmar.
Right.
So this does that and does it better than everyone else because it just adds more attacks, so more ranged mortals.
Right.
And finally, the bow counts as a hero.
Yeah, which is really interesting.
So commands are suddenly opened up.
Right. And, I mean, these guys always benefit well from +1 to hit if they're especially if they've moved. I think it's just a really solid group of models, and it's the price, the cost points wise isn't awful for what they do. The only problem with these models is that they are extremely flimsy.
Yes. Again, wet sock to the face kills them.
So, and that's where I think that threat overload is probably how destruction is going to utilize these models. Is if you're looking down a bunch of pigs charging down the lane, are you going to worry about the guys with crossbows in the back? I don't know. So I think that's the only real drawback, is that these guys are just so flimsy.
One other slight drawback, they were still my number 1. Again, they're anti-monster.
Yeah,
which varies wildly with the meta and everything else and who you're facing.
Right, so they don't get to use the +1 attack if you're not facing against any monsters. It just, at that point, they're just filling a role that you would otherwise have.
Which I do feel they're still worth it in that regard.
I agree. Yeah.
So this was also Mitchell's number 2.
Okay.
Great against monsters, decent against everything else. Shame with destruction only. Mitchell and I have the same problem when there are no destruction factions we like. So, yeah, but you actually play Cruel Boys. So
yes.
We should bring that up because he knows them very well. So this was my number 1, Mitchell and Kevin's number 2.
Right.
Which brings us to your number 1.
Veremord Shamblers are my number 1.
My number 2, or no, my number 3. Sorry.
I play all the Death Armies.
Oh yeah, you play all of them, don't you?
Yeah.
Dang.
And the thing that just really drew me to putting this at my number 1 is the -1 to ward saves.
Yeah. So Corpse Guard's a hero.
Yes, which is huge.
Yes,
because he's less than 9. He's 9 wounds or less.
Heroes in death are more important than heroes in any other faction.
Oh, for sure.
Like bar none. And he's 8 wounds for a Corpse Guard.
I think he's 8 or 9.
So look out, sir.
Yeah.
And he's not infantry, so.
No, well, you just have to be because he's above the wound cap. Is he above the wound cap for Galatian Champions?
Yes.
Okay, so so he doesn't benefit from Galatian Champion, but it is lookout, sir. And he gives, I believe he also gives bonuses. He can to
6-up ward to all the zombies.
Yep, which is basically taking the battletome rule and transferring it over, because if you take zombies outside of their battletome, they don't get the ward save.
The Corpse Guard itself has a 5-up ward,
which is nice, because it's not terribly durable otherwise.
No. And then finally, the main one, it's only got one actual ability.
Right.
Which is subtract 1 from ward rolls for enemy units within 12 inches of the Corpse Cart.
Within 12 of the Corpse Cart. Not wholly within, just within 12 of the Corpse Cart. So you can actually really project that. And if you're not playing as a faction that has a whole lot of ranged available to them, this is you can really and of course there are a lot of 6-up ward saves out there. Once again, I'm going to talk about Daughters of Cain. Like if you could just strip that ward save from Daughters of Cain,
that's basically the only defensive they have.
Right. Also too, it's really strong as like Fire Slayers. Fire Slayers, you take that ward save from a 4-up to a 5-up.
Suddenly,
you can kill a lot more dwarves that way.
Yeah.
And a lot of things just give out a 6-up ward save. So if the ability to just strip that away completely just reduces that durability just that much. And the 12-inch range, like if it was a 6-inch range, I would not have ranked this nearly as high.
Yeah, that's a point.
But a 12-inch range and not requiring visibility either. Like
that's also a good point. I didn't think about that. Yeah.
I think that this is like the zombies are nice. Like the zombies don't they don't bring a whole lot as far as like they can hold an objective. They do mortals on their attacks, so like it's not nothing. But yeah, I feel like in armies like this could do really well in OBR.
Yeah.
Of course, OBR getting a new tome soon, so we don't.
Yeah, we'll see.
Obviously, you can't take them in Soul Blight, but Flesh Eater Courts, it'd be really handy in Flesh Eater Courts as well.
Yeah.
Just to have something else. First of all, something that can hang back, because Flesh Eater Courts is such an aggressive army.
Yeah, it's, you get through your entire... Again, though, getting a new tome.
Right.
I'm assuming they're not going to lose the aggressive part, though.
Probably. That's kind of their thing.
Yeah.
Night Haunt. Night Haunt already have a lot of ways. It's not quite as useful for Night Haunt, but it is a way to kind of bring some Quicksilver Host into...
Yeah, Night Haunt being the newest tome. We've talked a lot, you and I, about the arms races and play spaces of Age of Sigmar. Right. Like they tend to operate in design spaces, and ignoring wards it's kind of tapered off a little bit.
It has,
but it's definitely a tool in their toolbox that they're more willing to add.
Right.
Night Haunt feels like it was the height of that,
and the irony of it, this is really good against other death factions.
That's the really fun part, is like that 6-up ward those zombies have. If you have this Regiment of Renown, no.
Right. Yeah. It's really cool that they have this, they kind of counterplay other death really well, because almost all death has a 6-up ward save.
Which is kind of fitting, because this guy's on the run from his own death faction.
Exactly. So yeah, that's why I ranked it number 1. I feel like there's just a ton of utility, and for not a huge cost.
That is true. They're also cheap.
Yeah.
It was number 3 for me, mostly because I didn't feel like I personally didn't see the other death factions really loving it. Mm-hmm. But I guess they kind of do.
It depends on what, and a part of it is Soul Blight, of course, can't take it, but Night Haunt, it has trouble keeping up with Night Haunt a little bit.
Yeah, it's gonna lag behind.
But the 12-inch range helps with
12 inches is generous.
Yeah, because it can just toot up, auto run 6 to the middle of the board and just command it over a 24-inch bubble of -1 to ward,
which against certain armies that's the entire action spot of the game,
right? And
for their entire army,
and the fact that it's within and not wholly within is a huge
all the difference
deal.
in the world.
Yeah.
Thankfully, they've mostly avoided wholly within for affecting enemies.
Yes, yeah. Usually debuffs don't require wholly within, because that would be absurdly annoying to try and make work.
Yeah, which is, I have one guy out.
Right.
So this was my number 3. This was Mitchell's number 5.
Okay.
Meant to be a tar pit, but fragile. And the coolest part, -1 enemy ward, is situational.
So I don't.
I'm going to hard disagree with you on that one, Mitchell.
I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say, Mitchell. There are a lot of 6-up wards out there, especially on characters and stuff.
Wards are such a big part of the design space of keeping things alive.
Even a -1, a lot of characters, we don't talk about Gotrek, for instance. A -1 ward to Gotrek suddenly makes him way more vulnerable.
Yeah, and especially if you're trying to drown him in attacks, which except for OBR.
No, even OBR get tons of attacks.
Yeah, I guess even they're just slow. But yeah, death in general is more about quantity over quality.
Lots of dice, yeah.
Unless you're playing Soul Blight, Avangori,
right?
Which you can't take these guys anyway with that. So
right,
yeah. Mitchell's wrong. Okay, so
I'm okay with saying that.
Mitchell's seal of disapproval. So you're number 1, my number 3.
Mm-hmm.
I think honestly, I'm gonna stay on the mic here. Many of these you can't go wrong with.
No, I don't think so either. Especially the pit beasts. If you just want those models, it's a good way to get them.
That is the main thing, is that all of these are pretty competitively priced. They are all bundle boxes, so to speak. None of these are just the cost of unit plus unit.
Right.
They're all at least a kind of savings.
Right.
We say this a lot on this channel, but if you want everything in there, it's a good deal.
I'm thinking about just honestly picking up the Rune Throng just to have them in case whatever happens with Dawnbringer Crusades includes these dwarf models.
Just in case they make it a dwarf, you can have another dwarf army?
Yeah.
You've got 2. We go for the 3rd, right?
That's right. I want the whole Dwarves at Hall involved here.
Yeah. Maybe they'll have a city that can ally in Fire Slayers.
Oh, don't tease me like that.
Like they threatened to with before someone looked at Hollow Hearts rules and went, "Wait, guys, we can't do that."
Even though all through the fluff, it's like they like Fire Slayers.
Yeah, that was my favorite part of that. The leaks from that. It was like, yeah, they were originally going to be allyable in until somebody went, on second thought,
it's a bad idea.
Maybe Magic plus Fire Slayers is the worst possible plan. So all of these are coming out this coming Saturday.
Correct.
From time of recording and time of release. Should be up for pre-order. I think we got kind of a decent supply this time. It's not like the previous boxes where GW has been sending us one of everything.
Which is really annoying.
Yeah, especially with these. The nice thing about this is that if you already own these models, because the rules are free.
They're free on the Warcom website under downloads. So
if you want them physically, they're in the upcoming White Dwarf.
Right.
If you already own these models, there's nothing you have to buy.
Right. You're already good to go.
Like, I could already play this, the Rune Throng.
Yeah, and I'm good to go with the Veremord Shamblers and, yeah, I mean, and the Cruel Boys one, of course. But yeah, I feel like these are pretty good deals for what you get. I think it's a really cool, first of all, it's a really cool callback to Warhammer Fantasy Battle.
Mm-hmm.
And I know what the popularity of Total War Warhammer, I know that they kind of play off of that a little bit with,
And it's a good idea.
Yeah, absolutely. Cross-marketing, never hurt anybody.
Wish they'd do more of it, honestly.
Right. But yeah, I as a body of work, I like these boxes.
I will also say I now know why the Tzeentch Endless Spells have been out of stock on GW's website for the past 6 months.
Because they've been putting them in here.
They were a little busy poaching them all.
Yeah.
Well, let us know down below if you, A, agree with our rankings, B, if you think Mitchell is wrong, which he is, C, if you're picking up any of the boxes, D, applesauce.
I'm picking D.
Always pick the D.
Always D.
We'll see you next time.